I knew things had changed when Ronnie Stetzer came back to town. He was at one time my wife's fiancé, Cindy. Ronnie had broken up with Cindy a year before I met her. She made no secret of the fact that Ronnie had broken her heart when he decided to break up with her and marry a rich woman 10 years older. I started dating Cindy. She didn't have the great looks of a model or movie star, but she was very pretty. She had soft brown hair and brown eyes and a beautiful face, but it was her loving heart that drew me to her. We were married about a year later, and our little girl Amanda was born 9 months later. Life was good for 18 of our 19 years together. We had our disagreements, but nothing serious until recently. Usually our disagreements came when we shared responsibilities. Cindy was the only child in the family and was spoiled by her parents. Over the years, however, she learned to keep her stubbornness in check. When our daughter was born, Amanda became my little princess. We were especially close and our family was very friendly. However, over the last year, Cindy and I seemed to be drifting apart. I began to realize that we were doing less and less together. However, our lovemaking was very good, and we did it at least twice a week and more often than that. Cindy seemed happiest when we were cuddling. I knew she loved me deeply. I still loved Cindy, but in a different way. It was no longer like the hot, passionate love we had felt when we were first married. We were like two old shoes that had known better days, but fit together well. Still, I loved my wife very much and especially loved the life we had built. When Amanda graduated from high school, the changes in Cindy seemed to accelerate. She seemed to be on the verge of a breakdown. And the closer it got to the time when Amanda would leave for college, the more uncomfortable Cindy became. I was now the chief of detectives for the sheriff's department, and I had 32 detectives under me. Since this county wasn't a high-crime county, the job wasn't too stressful. Cindy was still working as a dental hygienist. About a month after Amanda left for college, Ronnie showed up at a barbecue thrown by a couple, John and Ann Smythe, who were more Cindy's friends than mine. Nevertheless, John and I got along just fine, since he owned a security company and we always had a lot to talk about. I had no idea Ronnie would be there, but Cindy certainly did. She immediately pulled away from me, which wasn't unusual, and started circling. But an hour later, I went looking for her and found her and Ronnie sitting on the porch. As I approached, Cindy's neck was slightly flushed, which meant she was up to something I wasn't going to like. She quickly introduced me to Ronnie and my stomach clenched. As a cop, I had developed an inner instinct, and mine told me this was real trouble. Cindy tried to brush it off like she was surprised to see him, and they were just reminiscing about old times. But her neck turned red during the explanation. I decided I wasn't going to blow this whole thing out of proportion. As a police officer, I deal with extremely unpleasant situations many times. Nevertheless, it is necessary to handle them in a calm and professional manner. Sometimes that can be very difficult. The next working day after the barbecue, I checked on Ronnie through my channels. I learned that his wife had died of cancer a year ago. In all those years, Ronnie hadn't even had a speeding ticket, let alone other problems with the police. As the months went by, we saw Ronnie more and more often. I knew this was no accident, so I began to prepare for the worst. I figured that any day now, Cindy would want to talk to me about something. But as prepared as I was, Cindy blew me out of the water when she decided to do it. We had just finished a rare morning lovemaking session, and I thought that maybe all my worries had been for nothing. It was clear to me that Cindy still loved me as much as ever. "Ted, I want to talk to you about something," she said nervously. "And I don't want you to be angry. I want you to let me finish before you say anything." My stomach flipped. "You know Ronnie was my first love," she explained. "We were engaged. Then he fell in love with Catherine, and we broke up. After his wife died, he was devastated. He's so lonely. He tells me he still loves me, and I have to admit I still love him. But at the same time, I love you. I didn't say a word and tried my best to control my breathing and stay calm. That gave Cindy courage because she smiled and continued. I still want to be your wife, but I want to be with Ronnie too. Ronnie and I talked it over and decided it would be fair for me to stay with you for a week and him for a week. I slipped out of bed, got dressed, and left without a word. I headed to my office and closed the door. The receptionist looked at my unshaven face but didn't ask. I told her I didn't want to be disturbed unless it was something serious. I was left alone. I sat in the unlit office for hours. I went over and over in my head the proposal my wife had made to me. It was the most selfish thing she could have done. It was clear to me that Cindy wanted to sit on two chairs. That can't happen. She would have to choose. Around 5 o'clock, I got home. I was really annoyed when I saw Ronnie's car in the driveway. I tried to pull myself together and use all my years of police training to stay calm. However, all that training didn't prepare me for anything like this. I found them in the living room sitting nervously. Cindy quickly stood up and walked over to me to kiss me. I pushed her away and saw that she was in pain, but I didn't care. We need to talk about this, Cindy said nervously. We don't have anything to talk about, I replied shortly. You either want to be with the asshole, or you want to be with me. You can't have him and me. I don't think you've fully thought this proposal through, Ronnie said, looking at me nervously. I'm not going to take your wife away from you. I'm just going to give her the extra love she needs. Yes, we'll share her, but she'll never miss any of her marital obligations. Now, my inner rage was almost on the verge of boiling over. That smug bastard had just told me that I should let Cindy sleep with him because she needed the extra love. They both made me cringe. And in that moment, I realized my marriage was over. Except, I said, looking fiercely at Ronnie, the marital duty of giving up all the others. No, I'm not going to agree to that. Ted, Cindy said with an expression that told me she was now upset with me. It's going to happen. The question is whether or not you're going to be a part of it. No, I said. Both of you leave. Cindy burst into tears. Ted, please give me this. I've been a faithful wife all these years. Ronnie was my first love, but I don't want to lose you. I love you so much, but I love Ronnie too. I snorted and looked at Ronnie. Tell me, Ronnie, if your late wife had come to you with a similar offer, would you have accepted it? He smiled at me and nodded. If it could make my wife happy, I'd gladly accept it. Bullshit, I said with more force than I meant to. But I wanted to follow through with my thoughts, so I turned to Cindy. What about you, Cindy? If I came home with an ex-girlfriend and told you I wanted you to share me with her, how would you feel about that? Cindy hesitated for a few seconds before answering. I'd probably be upset like you are right now, but in the end I'd agree, because I really love you and want you to be happy. More bullshit, I said, shaking my head. I'm going to contact my lawyer in the morning to negotiate a divorce. I think the division of assets should be pretty straightforward. The house only has a small mortgage. Once that is paid off, we will split the proceeds. Our investments, savings, and current accounts will be split. Amanda's college fund will remain untouched. There will be no alimony since you'll be living with the asshole sitting there. Now both of you please leave. Cindy was crying to the point of tears as Ronnie took her hand. Walking to the door, Cindy turned to me and said, If you change your mind, I love you very much. I want you in my life. As soon as they left, the silence of the house came over me. I felt empty inside, but my years on the force had taught me stamina. I put the wound in the box and closed the lid. Then I went to my office and started making a list of what I needed to do. I knew exactly what kind of lawyer I was going to get. Her name was Sally Leone. She had a reputation as a real shark in divorce proceedings. She usually represented wives, and the poor husbands never knew what hit them. Over the years, our paths crossed. I helped her many times when needed. I looked over the list and realized there was one thing I hadn't done yet. I need to call Amanda and let her know what's going on. It broke my heart to have to tell my little girl what her mother was doing. It took Amanda a full 5 minutes to calm down so I could truly understand her. What happened next was a surprise. That damn whore did this to you. Daddy, she said venomously. All these years you've been so good to her, to us. And now she's stabbing you in the back. If she does that, I want nothing to do with her. Amanda, I said calmly, you're very upset right now and I understand how you feel. But Cindy is your mother and she loves you unconditionally. Don't ruin your relationship with your mother over this. We'll all lose if you do. Can't you at least wait a few days before you talk to her? What if she calls me? Amanda asked. If she does, I'll give her the full story. Please, if she calls, don't answer for a few days. Promise me you'll do that. Amanda reluctantly agreed to honor my request. Later that night, Cindy called me very concerned. She had tried to call Amanda but was unable to. I explained that I had spoken to her and our daughter was obviously upset. I explained to Cindy that Amanda wanted to calm down before talking to either of us about the subject. I bet you turned her against me, Cindy accused me. I bet you painted the most disgusting picture you could. Cindy, how can I paint a worse picture than you've already painted? I said calmly, knowing it would make her angry. Her mother wants her father to let her sleep with another man. Before Cindy could say anything, I decided to tackle one of the items on my list. Now that I have you on the line, you should hire a lawyer. Please, Ted, don't do this, she cried again. It's killing me that you want me out of your life. I love you so much. Can't you give in to me a little? There's nothing to discuss, Cindy, I said and hung up the phone. I took the next week off to focus on getting all the ducks in a row, but the nights were horrible. Lying in bed alone was unbearably lonely. I would wake up in the morning and reach for Cindy, only to remember why she wasn't there. The first thing I did was call Sally, but I was unpleasantly surprised when she told me that Ronnie had already called her. That bastard was secretive. He must have already figured out who the best divorce lawyer was, and now he was ahead of me. Well, if I can't hire you, I said, somewhat offended, can you recommend someone I should hire? I said Ronnie contacted me. Sally snorted. I didn't say he hired me. In fact, I told him you'd already hired me. Wow, I said with great relief. I really appreciate you doing this. Ted, most men in this town think I'm a piece of shit, she said bitterly. You're one of the few who has always treated me with respect. You're one of the few who has tried your best to help me. I've always appreciated that. There's no way I would ever turn against you. Again, I'm very grateful. You'll still have to pay my fee, she said with a laugh. I really appreciate you, but I have to pay for the lights too. It's not a problem, Sally, and thanks again. Even days later, the phone conversation between Cindy and Amanda didn't go well. According to both, it degenerated into a shouting match with ugly names thrown back and forth. Cindy called me afterward, almost hysterical that she had lost her daughter forever. I told her I'd talk to Amanda and try to work things out, but it turned out to be much harder than I could have imagined. Amanda was angry when I spoke to her a week later. According to my daughter, she told her mother that she wanted nothing to do with her. Cindy would not be invited to the prom or wedding, and if she had grandchildren, she would never meet them. Now I understood why Cindy was hysterical. The calls from Cindy continued until the day of the divorce. She kept begging me to reconsider and accept their plan. I, of course, continued to refuse. After the divorce, the calls stopped and I tried to move on. Thank goodness I had a job. As chief of detectives, my schedule was pretty flexible. Over the next 6 months, I became much more hands-on. I was often able to point some of my new detectives in the right direction. That way, they didn't waste any time descending into obvious dead ends. I also began to review our unsolved cases. As a result of my efforts, we were able to close a long-forgotten murder case. It turned out that the victim's ex-boyfriend had done it. They always had the evidence, but they just didn't see it. For that, I got a commendation and a raise. Cindy and Ronnie got married about a month after the divorce. They wanted to buy my half of the house, but the thought of Ronnie living in my house turned me inside out. Ronnie threatened to go to court to force me to sell it. I told him to go ahead and sue. I was friendly with all the appraisers in town, and when I explained my dilemma, they all agreed to help. The appraisals were much higher than the house was worth, yet Ronnie didn't care. He paid a ridiculously high price for my house. It pissed me off, but there was nothing I could do about it. In the end, though, I liked the result. I got a lot more money out of the sale than I could have. The divorce went better than I thought it would. I have Sally to thank for that. Her analysis was so thorough that she found information that helped me. The down payment on the house was inherited from my grandfather. Thus, the amount was not considered community property. As a result, I received about 75% of the sale proceeds. With that money, I bought myself a cash apartment not far from work. Life goes on, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. All those years with Cindy, and here she decided I wasn't enough. I tried to go back to the dating scene, but it was even more depressing. Most of the women I dated came with a ton of baggage. Some of them were just plain intimidating, and almost all of them desperately wanted to get married. I, on the other hand, wasn't interested in marriage. I'd been down that road before. One night, about 8 months after Ronnie and Cindy's wedding, I was having dinner at a restaurant. I didn't realize they were there until Cindy sat down. I was surprised to see my ex-wife, but decided I wasn't going to be nasty. I looked around and saw Ronnie sitting at a table at the other end, studying the menu. "How are you doing, Ted?" Cindy asked quietly. "I'm doing fine," I replied with a sad smile. "How are you doing?" "I still miss you every day," she said, placing her hand on top of mine. "I still love you very much. If you ever find it in your heart to accept Ronnie, I'd love to be with you again." At first, I was going to pull my arm out from under her and tell her to go for a walk, but then an idea hit me. I'd have to talk to Amanda first, but it might be something I could do to get back at that asshole, Ronnie. "I miss you too, Cindy," I admitted honestly. "I hate waking up and you're gone, but you're a married woman now. By the way, I think your husband is looking for you." Cindy looked at Ronnie and he was looking at her with a what the hell expression. She just nodded to her husband and stood up. "Remember, I still love you." That same night, I called Amanda and explained what I wanted to do. At first, she was horrified and told me I was giving in to this slut. Then I explained why I wanted to do it, and she started giggling. The giggling turned to laughter. "That's just great, Daddy," Amanda finally said. "Go for it." The next day, I called Cindy with my daughter's blessing. I told her I wanted to talk to her and Ronnie. I told her I was thinking about our conversation yesterday. Cindy was thrilled, and we agreed to meet at our old house at 7 o'clock that evening. I arrived at 7 sharp. Cindy led me into the living room. It was disheartening to see him sitting on the couch in my former home. However, I took some satisfaction in the annoyed expression on his face. It was clear to me that Cindy had blamed this meeting on Ronnie at the last minute. He glared at me like a dagger. I pretended not to notice anything. After pouring us each a cup of coffee, Cindy settled on the couch between Ronnie and me. I got right to the point. "Cindy, what did you mean when you said the offer to share still stands?" A smile appeared on Cindy's face. "Yes, absolutely, the offer still stands. I told you that I still love you deeply. It's just that I love Ronnie too." "Well, if you agree," I said, trying to feign nervousness, "I'd say yes. I don't have anyone right now. At least this way I'll have you part of the time. I've been so lonely without you." Cindy rushed over to me. She kissed me as passionately as we had never kissed before. "Ted, you've made me the happiest woman in the world." Wait a minute, Ronnie said, standing up. We haven't discussed this yet. It's the same thing you suggested, I told Ronnie calmly. Yes, but still, Cindy, you and I need to discuss it first. Ronnie was very excited. We've already discussed it, Cindy said, a little surprised by Ronnie's objection. When did we discuss it? Ronnie blushed. Don't forget, we discussed it before we presented Ted with the plan. You said you were more than willing to share. Ronnie was discouraged by his own words, and there was nothing he could do about it. Still, he wasn't going to give up so easily. I still think we need to talk about it. The thought of pointing out to Ronnie what a hypocrite he was on my tongue. It was the same deal he'd offered me, but now the shoe was on the other foot. He was the husband and I was the ex. However, I decided to let this drama play out between Cindy and Ronnie without my involvement. Okay, I'll leave and wait to hear from you, Cindy, I said, kissing her before leaving. Once back in the car, I started laughing my ass off. I had switched roles with this asshole. Now he was wriggling like a worm. I wish I had been a fly on the wall that night. The next day, I got a call from Cindy saying that Ronnie was very upset. But when she told him she was going to leave, he agreed. Cindy would spend 1 week with me and 1 week with Ronnie. Of course, at Ronnie's insistence, none of this could be done until I was tested for STDs. I agreed on the condition that they both get tested as well. Cindy didn't object, but Ronnie was not happy. As it turned out, we were all clean. The next week, I stopped by to pick up Cindy. Cindy looked good when she came to the door. Ronnie, on the other hand, looked like he had murder on his mind. I grabbed Cindy and kissed her hard. Then I grabbed her 2 suitcases and we walked out. I decided that I would do everything I could to make this night special. I took her out to dinner and then to the dance. Then we went back to my apartment. I want you inside me, she whispered hoarsely. When you're inside me, I know you still love me. I loved Cindy, but not enough to want her to be my wife again. We lay there and cuddled until I fell asleep. The week went by quickly and very pleasantly. I had to work, so I told Cindy that she could go home for the day if she wanted. Cindy was adamant she was my wife for the week. That made me cringe inwardly. But hell, if that's what she wanted to believe, that was fine with me. All I was interested in was fucking Ronnie's wife. She cleaned the house, went grocery shopping, washed my clothes, cooked meals, and even set our dinner times. I had a blast. I even got Amanda to talk to her mother without yelling at her. Of course, Amanda was aware of my plan, and I'm sure she laughed at how clueless her mother was. As I drove Cindy home, Ronnie looked both pleased and angry. Whatever anger was simmering inside him, he kept it in check. He kissed Cindy passionately right in front of me. I just pecked Cindy on the cheek, said, "I love you," and left. For the next 3 months, our new agreement was honored. I have to say, for me, this arrangement was great. Fucking Cindy after the divorce was a hit, especially since it was her suggestion. I was now getting laid 6 or 7 times a week. Another benefit of this new arrangement was that I convinced Amanda to come home and spend some time with us. I'm not sure if my daughter did this because she missed her mother or if she was making fun of her. One day, maybe 2 months after this new arrangement began, I was checking on my 3 detective teams working different crime scenes. Just then, a call came over the radio about a disturbance at Mick's Tavern. Since I was only a block away from there, I decided to check it out for myself. When I got there, I found that there had been an altercation with a drunken customer. I was surprised to find out that the drunk was Ronnie. I decided to take care of the problem. After letting the 2 officers go, I turned to Ronnie. "Come on, Ronnie," I said, taking his hand. "I'll take you home. I don't need your fucking help. Ronnie, your choice is either I take you home or you go to jail. What's better for you?" He decided to take the ride home. All the way to my old house, we didn't say a word. When he got out of my car, all he said was, "Fuck you." By the 4th month, Ronnie was less and less happy about our arrangement. He and Cindy argued about it more and more. He wanted it to stop, but Cindy couldn't understand why. I didn't interfere in their discussions. I just kept telling Cindy that she was wonderful and continued to get all the sex I wanted for a week. This arrangement allowed me to sleep with her much more than when we were married. Finally, when I came to pick up Cindy for a week, about 5 months after our agreement, things came to a boil. Ronnie and Cindy were yelling at each other in the yard. I decided to try to calm them down. I think you guys should calm down, I said with a smirk, or someone will call the police. Fuck you, Ronnie threw angrily before turning to Cindy again. If you go with him, then our relationship is over. We had a deal, Ronnie, she said with a nasty note in her voice. Since I've known Ronnie, I've never seen my ex-wife speak to her new husband with anything other than affection. The agreement is bullshit, Ronnie yelled. And I'm telling you again that if you go with him, it's over. You can't be serious, Cindy said in a dismissive tone. You are the one who came up with the idea of the exchange a long time ago. With those words, Ronnie stormed into the house and slammed the door shut. I looked at Cindy questioningly. He's just having a bad day, Cindy said, taking my hand. He'll get over it, and everything will go back to normal. Things didn't go back to normal. Apparently, Ronnie had moved out. Cindy tried to talk to him, but he was adamant. They were done. Around noon on Wednesday, Cindy called me and told me what had happened. He left me, Ted, she said, sobbing. Can I move in with you? Yes, I'll be at your place on Monday when it's time for my regular week, I said cheerfully. But Ronnie's gone, Cindy said confused. I want to come back to you completely. I realize I made a huge mistake. Everything Ronnie said about sharing was just bullshit to keep us apart. I want things to go back to the way they were. Well, you see, Cindy, I said, feigning embarrassment. You wanted me to share you. You didn't want me to work full-time. So I'm used to you being just a part-time wife. I don't think that's changed with Ronnie gone. So you still want me to pick you up on Monday? Cindy started sobbing uncontrollably, and silence followed. For a moment, I thought she had hung up, but the bitter sobbing resumed. Finally, after several attempts, Cindy regained her speech and stammering said, Yes, yes, please, Ted, I'd really like it if you. I had returned home from business trip earlier than planned, and I had the all-too-natural idea of surprising my husband with my return and with a nice dinner. I hid myself in the living room closet, trying not to laugh out loud with excitement from seeing him all surprised and happy to see me, when the front door finally opened and I could hear his voice. But then, I also heard a woman's voice that I didn't recognize, and in a few moments, I saw them come into the living room together, arm in arm. My husband was with another woman, a stranger to me. At that moment, I realized that everything was a lie, and what was going to be a surprise became revenge. I was never going to forgive him, and he was going to pay well for his actions. How could he betray me, his own wife? Prepare yourself, darling, for what might be your last few seconds of precious life. My name is Wendy, and I'm a 32-year-old officewoman. After graduating from college, I got a job at a major company that manages gardening equipment, and since then, I've been working hard as a career woman with a potentially bright future ahead of her. Up until about a year ago, I only cared about my working life and my personal success as a working member of society, but a year ago, I met Landon, my future husband. We met through a mutual friend who invited the two of us to a small drinking party at a nice tavern downtown, and he worked in another smaller company. We hit it off, and after 17 months of being a couple, we got married, and we lived a happy life together as a working couple. My husband works for a small business in agricultural machines, and he never works overtime, and I don't work overtime either, and I also came home earlier than he did, so whenever I did, I would often wait for him after I cooked something for dinner. It was hard to do housework after work, but my husband worked hard in a physically demanding job, and my determination to cheer up with a meal was pretty impressive, so I didn't really mind doing the housework. As long as Landon could rest at home, nice and peaceful, when he was tired, that was good enough for me. A part of me also wanted him to think that I was a good wife for him, so, in my own way, I was doing my best at home too. Then, one day, it was decided that I was going to go on a long-term business trip. This business trip was related to an impending promotion of mine, and I was very excited. I even thought that this business trip would decide the fate of my career, if not my life itself. But during the trip, Landon would be alone in the house. He's a grown man who can take care of himself like it was a walk in the park, so there wasn't any need to worry. But one thing you should know about my husband, he is a catastrophically poor cook, and he's never done a day's housework in his life. Up until we got married, he was living in his parents' home, and everything was taken by my mother-in-law, Mrs. Braths. Landon can't even do his own laundry, but nowadays, in this advanced society, we have delivery service for meals, and there's a laundromat a short walk away from where we lived for laundry. I was sure he could manage. And while I was on my business trip, my husband was going to celebrate his 34th birthday. We used to spend his birthday together, but because of this stupid business trip, we couldn't spend it together this time. Landon, honey, we won't be able to celebrate your birthday together this year. I'm so sorry. Oh, Wendy, darling, it's okay. It can't be helped in this case. You have work to do. But good luck with your work, darling. I've always loved you because you always try to do your best. We'll do something to celebrate it again when you come back. How's that? That idea sounds awesome. Thanks so much. And I'm really sorry. I'll do my best as always. With some kind words from my husband, I got even more determined to do great, and I headed out on my business trip. While I was away, I was very busy. Work often lasted until after I usually went home. This made it difficult for me to find enough time to call my husband or have a real-time conversation over text messages. I did call him every once in a while, and by that I mean a couple of days. But when I could reach him, perhaps he was busy at the moment because he never answered the phone. I couldn't get in touch with him, other than messages, and it just wasn't the same. I missed him, but Landon had sent me off with his great words of encouragement, so I focused on working hard to land that big promotion. My hard work paid off in the end, because I finished a little bit early, and that meant that I could go home from my business trip a few days earlier than scheduled. I was so happy. I was able to come home on my husband's birthday, even though I told him I couldn't make it because of this business trip. I had the all-too-natural idea of surprising my husband with my return, and with a nice dinner on the day of his birthday. The plan was that I would leave work early on his birthday and bring home Chinese food and a nice birthday cake for him, and the wallet he wanted as a present. I had it all ready. I could only imagine how happy he would be to see me back home on his birthday. Just envisioning the look of surprise and excitement he would surely have on his face made me so eager to hurry up and get home. I arrived home long before he always did. That night would probably be the same as always. He would be home by 6 p.m. To surprise him, I hid in the living room closet. But even after 6 p.m., he still wasn't home. I wondered if it might be because he was celebrating his birthday with a bunch of his colleagues, and as I slowly began to be convinced that's what he was doing, I felt grateful for his friends. But I still wanted to see the look of surprise and excitement on Landon's face. So I didn't call it a night, even when it was after 6:30 p.m. I remained in the closet and waited for the familiar hum of his car. I was pretty tired from my long and tedious business trip where I spent an ungodly amount of time in front of papers and computer screens, and before I knew it, I was fast asleep. I only realized I was when I woke up a few hours later from the sound of a rumbling car engine. I opened the closet door slightly, and through the window, I saw the signal lights of the car scintillating. My husband had come home at last. I quietly closed the closet door and waited for him for another few minutes. I heard the front door open, and the familiar sound of Landon's business shoes echoed through the house. I had a good time today. Thank you for the delicious dinner. It was delicious, wasn't it? It was nice to spend your birthday with you, sweetie. Why in the goddamn world of ignorant bliss did I hear a woman's voice? One that I didn't recognize, in any case. And that sounded suspiciously young. I was so upset, but I tried not to make a sound in the closet. Seriously, I can't believe how happy a simple business trip could make me. I feel like every day I get to spend with you, Clara, I'm undoubtedly the happiest man in the world. It's actually insane how great I feel right now. Thank you, sweetie. I love spending time with you too. I can't help but feel sorry for your wife, but I always tell myself that it can't be helped. It's okay, darling. I'm only married to her for her money. You're the only woman I've ever loved. Am I really? Are you seriously only married to her because she's got bags of money stashed away? I know it'd be so hard for me when I discover my own loving husband says things like that about me. There's nothing good about her except for her money, literally the only thing she is going for her. And they got ridiculously excited as they piled on the bad things about me. I was shell-shocked, but unknowing of my presence in the room, they went on talking shit about me, laughing all the while. I always have an amazing time with you, Clara, but if I imagine that I only had a relationship with that hag, it's like suffocating me. It's a real nightmare. Then you're lucky I'm here. I'll say this again. I never loved Wendy. I love you so much, and I'm going to do what we can to be together, okay? Then they went to take a bath. I took advantage of the opportunity and left the house quietly. Maybe the better option would have been to interrogate the two slimy traitors right then and there, but the shock at what I'd witnessed was just too overwhelming. It was extremely difficult to prevent myself from hyperventilating and screaming in sorrow. I couldn't face the reality just yet. I needed time to gather my senses first. I booked a hotel room nearby and stayed there that night. As I was trudging towards the hotel, my emotions got the better of me, and I suddenly started to cry. I sat down on a bench in a small park, ripped open the box that contained Lana's birthday cake, forced my fingers around a large clump of dessert, and stuffed it in my mouth. The cream tasted very sweet, and somehow my tears, which were streaming into my mouth at this point, added a nice little tang at the beginning of each bite. From the point of view of passerbys, I was basically a woman dressed in office uniform, stuffing a ridiculous amount of birthday cake into my mouth, crying all the while, and getting cream in every nook and cranny of my face. I definitely looked a suspicious person, but during that time of personal crisis, what people thought of me was the least of my problems, and I couldn't care less. After crying a legitimate rainstorm, my sadness towards the situation gradually transformed into anger towards my husband. I don't mean to say that he owes me something, but no one can deny I've done so much for him. I cooked for him, did the housework for him, all because he couldn't do shit around the house, and when he told me there was something he wanted, I went, and actually something nice for him. I got him a birthday present that cost thousands of dollars, and he was still willing to cast me aside as an ATM machine and never accept me as the one he chose to spend the rest of his life with. Call me a money grubber, will you? Well, that doesn't come for free, my dearest. I threw the wallet I'd bought for his birthday as hard as I could into a nearby trash can. You've got some nerve to cheat on your wife while she's away on a business trip, my dearest, I muttered to myself as I left the park. On the way to the hotel, I decided to get a divorce, but I knew he would only be pleased if I divorced my husband. I decided to really make him suffer for his crimes before divorcing him. For a while thereafter, I continued to stay at the hotel. I was supposed to go back home next week, so until then, I can't go home. But I did actually stop by my house on the way, and the fact that I found Landon's car was strange, very strange indeed. At this time of night, he's supposed to be at work still. I called his company posing as a client and asked the receptionist at the other end of the phone, "Excuse me, is Mr. Landon Brass present at this hour?" "I'm sorry, ma'am, but it seems Mr. Brass has taken a vacation for about a week." "Oh, is that so? Thank you for telling me." So my husband is on vacation for a week. That led me to wonder if the woman whom he was having an affair with worked for the same company. I checked. "Well then, is there someone by the name of Clara?" "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It seems Miss McIntyre is also on vacation for about a week. Is there anything you need to inform us about? If it's urgent, I can put someone else on the phone to assist you." "No, it's not urgent. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, sir." After I said that, I hung up. I found out that my husband was having an affair with one of his coworkers. I was so sick of his stupid bullshit, I wanted to throw up. I couldn't comprehend the fact that I used to love Landon Brass. Now, I feel nothing but contempt, disgust, and fury. I stayed out of the house for a while, checking on them both from a distance. After perhaps an hour or so, I saw them having inappropriate physical contact as they exited the house. They got into Landon's car and drove off somewhere. They were each carrying a large suitcase, so naturally, I assumed the two snakes were going on a trip, taking an entire week off from work just to go on a vacation of adultery. What a couple of carefree jellyfishes. I made sure my husband was out of the house completely before I went inside. I decided to take all of my valuables and all the things I needed and leave the house, never to return to live again. After I was sure I had packed everything, I made one last check of the house, which was in fact a kind of formal goodbye to the building. I love that house. It was perfect for both of us to have a nice and peaceful time to rest after a hard day's work, and the backyard was absolutely beautiful. Landon and I were going to build a life together, and the first step was buying this house with most of what we'd saved up. It was not a new house by any means, but considering the fact that I was going to live in it with the person I loved, it was the best house I could have asked for. But now, I was living in it with a traitor, and I didn't feel comfortable at all. My biggest desire was to leave that house as quickly as I could, but my old love for this house made me linger for another few minutes. I took a walk around the inside. I discovered a lot of the woman's belongings, Clara's belongings. I became positive that while I was away on my business trip, they were indeed planning on living together in their cheesy, unfaithful excuse of passion. Assorted lotions, shampoos, conditioners, and items of makeup that weren't mine lined the nightstand in Landon's bedroom. His closet lodged her clothes, anything ranging from casual jeans and sweaters to beautiful dresses to inappropriately tiny blouses. The room had a fruity smell to it, and I later found out why. Landon's old bedsheets, which were now nowhere to be found, had been thrown away, probably, and replaced with new, orange-scented ones. When I saw all this, I was beyond angry. I was utterly mortified. I wondered what all the time we had spent meant exactly. Which had we been trying to build up the whole time? I left the house, and first went straight to a trusted lawyer who helped me prepare for the divorce, and then I went to a detective agency to gather evidence against the affair. When I went to the house the second time, I probably should have taken pictures of the evidence, but I felt like if I took pictures with my phone, the scene would burn itself into my mind in the worst way possible, and I didn't like it. Additionally, I couldn't stay in the hotel forever, so I rented an apartment that could accommodate a tenant for a month at a time. That's where I put all the stuff I had packed and taken away with me when I left the house. I had to find a new, bigger, better place to live. By this time, I had already made up my mind on getting a divorce, and nothing was going to change my mind. I no longer had any love for Landon Brass, and he was dead to me, but something told me it wasn't enough. Of all the pain he had caused me, I have to pay him back with pain tenfold. Otherwise, my gut would never be satisfied, nor would it ever forgive me for backing out. As I went about my work as usual, I waited for a call from the detective agency, and I got a phone call from at what was quite possibly the best time ever. They said they had accumulated enough evidence, which was excellent news. I asked them to keep that evidence in a secure place while I went back to my husband's house. There was a car parked outside, so I knew he must have returned from his trip of adultery. After I confirmed he was inside the house, I headed to the cake shop and bought a cake before I went back to my husband's house. I unlocked the door, and I quietly entered the building. I made sure he was not in the living room and then proceeded to approach his bedroom door. As I got ever closer, I could hear my husband and the woman known as Clara McIntyre, whom he was having an affair with, inside. I held up the box that contained the cake, opened it up quietly, took out the dessert, set the box aside in the corridor, and burst into the room. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. My voice startled them both, and their faces expressed the purest shock I'd ever seen. It was priceless, and I wanted to laugh, but keeping a straight face here and going through with the plan was key. Ignoring their ridiculous faces, I kept on singing. Happy birthday, dear traitor, happy birthday to you. Once I finished singing, I threw the entire cake at my husband as hard and as accurately as I could. The dessert landed with a satisfying splat all over his naked upper body, and some of the cream flew into the naked woman as well. Hey, what the frick are you doing, Wendy? What the frick am I doing? Well, look who's talking. And what do you think you're doing, eh? Well, I mean, wait, I didn't know you were home already. Why the hell didn't you call me? Why didn't I call you? Listen, buddy, I'm about to clue you in on the truth here. I was already here on your birthday. I hope I didn't say anything more to help you understand. Oh my God, there's no way. My husband's mouth started to spasm, and his darling lover must have been more speechless than he. Her mouth gaped open and gave me the impression she physically couldn't get it shut. I think you just stole my frickin' line, Mr. Brass. There's no way I'm seeing any of this right now. Could you explain to what exactly it is you're doing? Well, this is, what does you know about this place, madam? This is my house, you know. Well, perhaps my sudden intrusion really did the job to leave them catatonic. They were visibly upset, and they were not answering any of my questions. I'm only a money grubber, after all, and this lady is the only one you love, right? Well, I have just the remedy for that. From now on, you will pay me back all the money that you stole from me. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you better pay me back every single penny you owe me. No sooner had I uttered the word alimony than my husband gasped, and then I looked at the woman whom he was having an affair with. She was shaking. Well, don't just stay there where you are, in that uncomfortable position. Get down on the floor, on your knees. I'm sure you'll feel a lot better that way. The moment I told her so, they both rushed off the bed, kneeled before me, and bowed their heads towards the floor. I'm sorry, I was having a little bit of fun with her. Since you were away working, I missed you, and the loneliness was getting to me. Yes, that's all true. I have a husband myself, but he never pays any attention to me, and I was in desperate need of someone who appreciated my company. Exactly, and we were actually talking about ending things right when you barged in, Wendy. We were just saying goodbye to each other. Yes, we were. We both agreed it wasn't good for the ones we chose to marry originally. We literally just broke up, Wendy. Cheaters, liars, backstabbing traitors. I'm pretty sure all of these things describe the same two people. Let's see who can guess the right answer. I heard you two outside earlier, loud and clear. Bullshit. You were talking about ending things. What you were really talking about was taking a 2-week trip to Japan next. You've got to be kidding me. How do two people stoop to such low humanity? Damn it. That's what I said, and both he and the woman went deathly pale, indicating I hit the nail on the head. You guys are such assholes. I already mentioned I heard you guys talking shit about me the night of this bastard's birthday. With me having this much knowledge about what you think about my frickin' existence, you really think I'm gonna whatever horseshit excuse your bird brains come up with? I'm sorry. I admit that I cheated on you, and I deeply apologize. I hope you can forgive me. Just because you act all responsible and innocent right now doesn't mean you're any closer to being forgiven. I'm sorry, I really am. I really do believe that what I did was wrong. Divorce me. Now. Please, please don't say such things, Wendy. Really, it was just for fun. Ma'am, on behalf of Landon, I'm begging you, don't divorce him. Please. The name's Clara, right? Who are you to talk to on behalf of Landon Brass? Don't you dare forget that you're eligible for paying me alimony too. Eh. But, but, I was just having an affair. It's not like we were married, Landon and I. I don't think the law states that you can demand alimony from me because it was just fun and games. I don't believe this. Tell me what exactly is your IQ score. I'm just dying to know. Of course I can legally demand alimony from you. You knew the man whom you were with was married to another woman, and yet you went on with the affair, hoping to get something nice out of it. Newsflash, lady. Nothing nice comes out of unfaithfulness. I was so stunned that this woman was pretty much claiming that the Sun was basically the world's largest pizza in the entire state of Mexico. I couldn't believe I'd lost my actual husband to a woman with zero common sense. I want a divorce. I've already hired a lawyer, so if you want to know more about the demands, you'll hear about it from him. I've also been to the detective agency, and they acquired a lot of solid evidence of your stupid affair. If you're thinking of uttering excuses to get yourself out of this, don't freaking bother. It doesn't make any sense, for one thing. And second, you'd be digging your own grave. You can't be serious. I don't want a divorce. I don't want a divorce. You even said you didn't want to talk to me. Being around me was enough to get you disgusted enough to want to run the frick away from this place. I don't know how you expect us to live with ourselves as a married couple now that the relationship is ruined. Oh wait, of course. I'm the money grubber, so you literally need me in order to survive, right? No, no, that's not it. Oh, darling, it's a shame. Because this year, I actually got you that luxury brand wallet you've been wanting for quite some time. I had it, ready for you. And I was gonna give it to you. Now it's in the trash. No. No, there's no way you. Maybe you should have stayed true to yourself. Goodbye. That's all I had to say, and I left them with their grief and shame, alone in the house. Thereafter, Mr. Brass tried calling me a few times, but I ignored them all. I left everything to my lawyer. Mr. Brass was later fired from his job. Perhaps the fact that I went to the company where he and the woman whom he was having an affair with worked, and gave them an official letter from the detective agency that contained the evidence of their adultery. Nowadays, it isn't uncommon anymore to hear about people that cheated on their husbands or wives, and it's pretty much common knowledge right now that anyone who does engage in such crimes against humanity will lose credibility in the company and in life in general. How in the world did Mr. Brass and Miss McIntyre not know anything about that? Mr. Brass was so dependent on me for living expenses, so I wouldn't be surprised if he never saved a penny. Now that he was fired, he pleaded to me through my lawyer to let him pay the alimony and monthly installments. I agreed, as long as he paid me in full. As for Miss McIntyre, she was fired from her job and was left without any money. Mr. McIntyre found out about the affair. I believe he's also demanding alimony. She tried to turn to Mr. Brass for help, but found no luck with him, as he didn't have any savings whatsoever and was now working part-time. She decided she couldn't rely on him, and thus she betrayed him and replaced him with a man who seemed to be loaded with money. But that man turned out to be quite formidable because he didn't even work, and even though he's neck deep in debt, he never failed to waste his money on stupid things like gambling and marijuana. Knowing that neither Mr. Brass nor Miss McIntyre are living happy lives after their affair was exposed makes me feel somewhat relieved. The irony is that now I know full well it's not good to take pleasure in other people's unhappiness. I got a big promotion after that long business trip I took, and I was praised as the first woman in the company's history to be promoted to that position at such a young age, 32. There are junior staff who admire me because of this achievement and makes me subconsciously put more time and effort into my work. It's a very good thing I love my work, and now I've set myself a new challenge. To be a good boss who sets a good example for my subordinates, to be a trusted employee of the company and contribute to bringing it to greatness, and to acquire what is needed to be promoted even further up in the ranks of the enterprise. Wish me